Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mindful Morning with me, Ashley Walkneen. Today, I want to talk with you about self-care. In other words, I mean, how do you take care of you? What do you do for you? I've broken down self-care into 5 different parts of ourselves to make this easier to talk about because I find that sometimes we just need different things. Different parts of ourselves need to be fed in different ways. I've also done this because I want to talk about self-care strategies, ones that are longer practices, but also ones that are instantaneous, because I find that when I talk to people about self-care, the biggest complaint that I hear is, well, I don't have time for self-care. I don't have time for a self-care practice. So I want to offer ways that you can bring self-care into your moment-to-moment experience, as well as longer ways of caring for yourself. And it's important, there's no coincidence, when you get on a plane, they say to you, if in the event of an emergency, an oxygen mask comes down, put it on yourself first before you go taking care of other people. That's not a coincidence. Even in coaching and counseling, we as a profession, we have an ethical obligation to our clients to be engaging in a certain amount of self-care, taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're not bringing our own stuff into the room and affecting their time and the relationship with them, or their outcomes. So, when there's a lack of self-care, it has an impact, right? You know this already. It has an impact on your relationships and your day-to-day experience and how productive you are. So it's important to be able to tap into yourself, I think, and recognize what part of me needs some attention right now and how can I do that for me. So the first part of yourself that I'm going to talk about is the creative self. And when I talk about the creative self, it doesn't even really matter if you consider yourself creative or not. What I'm talking about is tapping into your own intuition, or your imagination, or your own inspiration. Many different ways you can do that, like listening to music or turning on your favorite podcast that really inspires you. Of course, it can also be things like, painting. I found that somebody once told me about drawing, where you just close your eyes and you just do this for like 30 seconds or a minute. You close your eyes and you just draw whatever, and you don't limit yourself, and it's not about making it look pretty, but it just taps you into that intuition. It's something you can do very quickly. So asking yourself, what kind of ways can you feed the creative part of you? And the second part of you that I'm going to talk about is the objective self. When I say the objective self, how we are perceiving the events and other people and everything as we go about our day, how we are relating to our own inner life, our own thoughts and emotions, has a lot to do with the way that we act, and also the way that we feel. If we are relating to that in a way that is unworkable for us, it just builds the stress. We become more and more tense when we get caught up in that. So I talk about this in the context of what I'll call fusion. So it's like you're being fused with really difficult thoughts, emotions, judgments about other people, and whenever you fuse with something, it's like it's right in front of your face. You can't see beyond it, and because you can't see beyond it, you start to struggle with what's on the other side. So this practice of self-care is learning to be flexible in shifting your perspective whenever you notice that this has happened. It's natural to get caught up in all of this stuff and to fuse with this, but when you recognize that, to have a skill set to be able to come back into the here and now, give yourself some separation, recognizing you've been caught up in that, is a really helpful thing to know how to do. And you can do that in a number of different ways. Of course, this is where mindfulness practices come in, meditation, those kinds of things as well. Those are formal practices. I do have in the Mindful Morning Toolbox, if you're in there, a number of mindfulness practices that are under 10 minutes long that will help you train this perspective taking. But you can do it instantaneously, literally anytime you recognize, you notice that you've been caught up, You name it. I've been caught up in a thought, an emotion, or whatever it is. Noticing, naming, and then coming back into the here and now, shifting that perspective. So that is the second part of you. The third part that I want to talk about is the social self. We're social creatures, right? Even if you're quite introverted like I am, there's a certain amount of social attention required in our lives, but not just any kind of social interaction, but one that is defined by love. And not even necessarily romantic love, but just knowing who your people are, those people that make you feel like you when you're around them. You feel the best part of you. Connecting with those people on a regular basis, even if it's just for a few minutes, a quick phone call. The fourth part of yourself that I'll talk about is the spiritual self. And even as I say it, it kind of makes me cringe inside because I recognize that not everybody has a spiritual practice or is spiritual or religious. So if that's you and you don't define yourself as spiritual or religious, what I'm talking about here is more about just having that sense of openness, inner space, stillness, oneness, regardless of what your beliefs are around that. So some people like to do things like being out in nature, going for a hike. And it's not really even just about being physical. It's just connecting to the stillness inside of yourself, that inner peace. So how can you do that? And the last category is the physical self. This is probably the one you're most familiar with, right? This is, taking time for the gym or running and, cooking something healthy, knowing your dietary needs. Everything is interconnected. And so how can you nurture the physical part of you? Now, as I've gone through these categories, you probably recognize that some of them are interlinked. Like there are certain things you can do to kind of hit multiple categories at one time. I think that's why yoga has become so popular, because it's, it kind of hits that spiritual self, the physical self, the creative self, and the objective self all at the same time. So what can you do? How can you be creative in putting activities into your life experience and moment-to-moment practices to feed multiple parts of yourself at once? So I will put these things inside the Mindful Morning Toolbox in a worksheet so that breaks down these 5 parts of you and gives some ideas, and have you think about how you can get creative and come up with ways that are specific to you and to your needs. So opt in there. It's absolutely free if you're not a part of it, and there's a whole bunch of extra resources and cheat sheets and things to help you take this work to the next level. All right, y'all, have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. Please like this, share this, leave me a comment, tell me what your self-care strategies are. Thanks.